All right. Welcome to the second episode of the World Builders podcast. This time I have Jamey Stegmaier from Stonemaier Games with me today. So
Hi,
how
thank
are
you
you
so much
doing?
for having me.
Yeah, it was. I'm as I said before, we started recording. I'm kind of awestruck that you choose to do this with me.
Yeah, like I said, I'm always happy to talk about games, whether they're my games, someone else's games. I really enjoy doing that. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about who you are and why you decided to do Scythe. That will be the focus of this podcast. So if you could do like an introduction to who you are and why you chose to like do
Yeah.
board games.
So I had the good fortune of playing games pretty much all of my life as a kid and as an adult. I discovered Euro games, and all my life I've also been designing games for fun. My first published game was Viticulture, which I published, self-published back in 2012 through Kickstarter. And then I worked my way forward through a couple different games, Euphoria, some expansions. Um, what was next after that? I'm missing something here. Scythe, Charterstone. Yeah, and I worked my way up to Scythe, which is the game, like you said, that you're going to discuss a little bit today. And yeah, that's my not my most recent game, but that was the last Kickstarter game that I did back in 2015.
I'm also a very proud owner of Scythe, and I will compliment you of the game. It's
Oh,
very
cool!
very
Thank
fun
you.
to play. So I'm gonna go a bit into the world building of Scythe because it's very unique. I haven't seen anyone else does this take of the early 1920s Europe.
Yeah, the world building. I agree. This is what drew me to the game as well, because it started out as illustrations and as a world. It didn't start out as a game. An artist named Jakub Rosalski in Poland. He very talented artist, but he's also very passionate about Polish history. And there was a war between Poland and Russia right after World War One that I didn't learn about in history class. I didn't know much about it, but apparently it was a really pivotal short war between Poland and Russia that prevented Russia from encroaching upon the rest of Europe. Jakob was very proud of his country's heritage for what they did during this war, and so he created this world around it. The world started out with just those two factions, Poland and Russia, or alternate history factions inspired by them. But then when I came in and I discovered this world, I asked if we could make it more than just a two-player game. And so he started building all these other factions into the world.
Hmm. Yeah, there's like it's five factions
Yeah,
in the
five
standard game,
factions in the
right?
standard game, and then we added two more in an expansion.
Yeah. The take with the mechs going around on the board is very very cool. Is that also from the artist? Is that something that he pushed you to do, or is it something that you had this mechanic that was that needed to be
Yeah,
in the game?
that was in the art from the beginning. That was one of the things that drew me to the art. So at the time that I discovered this world, Jakob had made maybe around 10 illustrations, and most of them showed kind of day-to-day life in farming, rural areas of this part of Europe, and usually there were mechs in the illustrations. And so this is one of the things that really drew me to it, because it seems they looked like real paintings that could have been real paintings in our world, except in our world we had tanks instead of mechs. And so he had that from the beginning. There's very little in the game really that I designed a mechanism for, and then he adjusted the world for it. Other than the factions, for the most part, pretty much everything came from the world building and the illustrations themselves.
And mostly that war between Russia and Poland.
That Yeah, I mean, I think that inspired it, but as the game grew, actually, no, I'm glad you said that because as the game grew, there was one other thing. We wanted players to we wanted to incentivize players to get out of their starting areas and go explore the map. And so we did a few things to encourage that. But one of the big things is that we put the factory. There's a factory hex in the middle of the board. And that was not in Jakob's original world. That was something that we discussed mechanically. And that's when he started further developing the story around what this factory was, why it was there, why players were interested in going there, and what it meant for the future of the story of Scythe.
Mm. So there's another expansion after the standard game, which is adding the airships, which is I haven't got to that part where I'm starting to buy add-ons yet, but I just need to like figure out the standard game as it is. But I'll definitely try to look into that that add-on. It seems like it adds quite a lot to the game.
Yeah, this was an interesting case because Jakob had exactly one illustration in I don't even know if I think it may have been a promo. I don't think it was even in the core game. But he had one illustration that had an airship in it. And we had no other mention of airships. And a designer in Germany, a guy named Kai Stark, saw that illustration and was inspired to design a fan-made expansion for Scythe around the idea of having airships in the game as a new unit. And he posted that idea, now actually more than just an idea, he posted a written rulebook and some playtest reports in the Scythe Facebook group about this airship expansion. I thought it was really cool, so I reached out to him and we ended up working together to fully design the expansion. But that was one of those things where it was inspired by Jakob's world. Jakob hadn't necessarily gone to me and said, "Hey, Jamey, we need to have an airship expansion." And it wasn't something I thought of. It came from someone like you who just saw something in Jakob's art and was inspired by it and put in a little bit of work and creativity to make it happen.
Yeah. He does some very good paintings. I was just before we started talking. I was just going through his art station. I was just scrolling through and there's if someone who is looking into like mech stuff and so on, they should definitely check his art out. It's very, very good. But there's also like art from where there's like gnomes and stuff that is being attacked by cats. So it's like you said, it's a what do you say? It's a cool take on a realistic painting. In Denmark, we have these shops where you can go and buy reused paintings and stuff, and it kind of looked like a very, very cheap painting that you can hang on your wall, but in a very good way.
Yeah.
But let's go back to Scythe. There was an add-on after the airships add-on. I can't really recall what they're called.
It's called the Wind Gambit. Was the second expansion?
Yeah. The Wind Gambit, yeah. And then there was the add-on where you adding in the Chinese faction.
That came before.
Right?
That was Invaders from Afar. Yeah, that was the first expansion. It added, it let people play up to 7 players, and it added the purple faction, which is inspired by Japan and China, and it added a green faction, which is inspired by Scotland and England and Ireland.
So it's adding more to the lore.
Exactly. Yeah. The idea is that all this activity has been happening in Eastern Europa, and these other external nations are starting to take notice of it, and they're interested in it. So they've traveled from afar to get there to interact with it. Yeah.
So there's this new expansion coming up, which is called Rise of Fenris. It's available. Let me see. I just wrote it down. August the 17th
Yeah, that's
of
the
this year.
release date. It's available for pre-order now, but that'll be the release date.
So can you explain a little bit what it's about? Um, Not going into too much detail because I'm planning on buying it myself.
No
So no
spoilers. Okay.
spoilers.
And this expansion fits really well into our discussion today because it is all about the story and the narrative and how the world of this game is changing. There's a big rule book. It might look a little bit intimidating because it's so long, but really, the game is divided into 8 episodes, and each episode has its own story and its own little changes to the rules. Usually, there's a new component added to the game just for that episode, and maybe some new setup rule and a new rule for that particular game that ties into the theme, how the world is advancing. There's also a big section of backstory in it. Again, we're talking about world building today. In the past, we've only really shown the backstory of Scythe through art, but for the first time now, we have a significant amount of text and lore explaining the exact story behind that world. But yeah, so the overall idea of this expansion is that it's an 8-game campaign. But for people who don't want to play a campaign game, you can also just unlock all the secrets in the game and mix them all together and play them as a modular expansion instead. It's designed to function that way, and it's designed to function as a campaign expansion. And for anyone who's wondering, it is not a legacy game. There's no permanence in it. So you can play the campaign and you completely reset it and play it again if you want, or you can play the campaign and just, like I said, with the modular elements, you can break them all up, and from then on, after the campaign, you can play them, mix and match those components as you wish. Do you know how you'll be playing it? Do you think you'll be playing the campaign, or do you think you'll play the modular version right away?
I think I'll start with the campaign. Because I kind of like stories where they build up and so on. So I think I don't. I want to play it like a story because I want to have a beginning and an end. But if I want to play it again, I'll try to like do the cool parts and so on.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine how long this must take to develop. It seems like a long process from me.
Well, it was a long process. I think 2 things helped it not take too long. One was that I had a very talented co-designer. It was actually his first design, but he had more experience playing campaign games than I did. His name is Ryan Lopez, and he's also a very talented writer. So he wrote the vast majority of the lore in the game. And just having the 2 of our minds go together with figuring out how the mechanisms would apply to that lore really, really helped. The other thing that helped is that it is an expansion. So usually it takes me a long, long time to design a game because everything can be changed. Everything is variable. But for an expansion, you already have the game in place. I already know how Scythe plays. I can easily get it to the table to test it. And I also just kind of know how certain things are going to work with it. I'm not starting over from scratch. So with the expansion, we're just adding like a few things here and there for significant changes changes that feel significant but aren't starting over the game from scratch. Made the design process a little bit easier. But yeah, you're right. The difficult part was we were essentially designing 10 different or eight different mini games within the game, and it took a while, but I think we got it right. Have you played other campaign games? What are some of your other favorite campaign games?
I haven't played any other campaign games yet, but as I have just got a daughter like 1.5 years ago, so time is limited. So it's still Scythe as the standard component is like the max playtime for a new dad. So I think that I think we managed to get a 4-hour game, and that is the limit before I get tired and need to take a break or something.
Oh yeah.
So I think Sight fits that limit for me quite nice. But I'm planning on, in the, what can you say, near future, to buy Gloomhaven to see what that's about. But I tried to check that out, and it seems a lot of focus have gone into the combat and not so much the story itself. But
yeah. That was actually a surprise to me when I played Gloomhaven. The good news about Gloomhaven is that Isaac, the designer, is a very talented writer. So the story that's in it is really well written, but mostly it is a tactical combat game.
Yeah, it's a bit expensive as well.
Yeah.
But it seems well crafted, as well as your game seems like the quality is high, and it's not that you're buying the 10th edition of Ludo or something.
Right. Yeah, the quality is very high. That's something I aim for with all of my games. I love and Jakob's art certainly helps that, makes it look beautiful. But I also like having these satisfying miniatures and little bits and pieces, and I love that.
It's very as someone who's very what can I say, art oriented and into the aesthetics of a board game. It's really pleasing to have a board game that has all this focus on it just looking nice, and and it not just looking nice, but it is looking in a way that it tells a story by just looking at the board. So that's a very good feature from my point of view.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's something that, like the board, even just that example, and Jakob spent a lot of time on it, and there's a lot of little Easter eggs and surprises hidden in the art on the board.
Oh, really?
So even in moments of the game where you don't necessarily have anything to do, you can look really closely at the board and see little details here and there that.
Oh, okay. I need to take a closer look. I haven't found any.
I think there's about 10 Easter eggs.
Well, now I know to do what after this. Okay, so you said it was going to be back to Rise of Fenris. It was going to be 8 episodes, and then you said it was something else as well.
Yeah, so it's 8 episodes. I kind of go ahead.
I'm just reading from your website as well. It was 8 games, and there was 11 modules.
11 modules, right? Yeah. So the modules are found. Most modules have a new component associated with them, and a lot of those components are found on punch boards. There are 6 punch boards that players are instructed not to look at until the game tells them to. And there are also 5 big tuck boxes in the game that remain closed until the game says open tuck box A or open tuck box B, and then you'll get a pretty big surprise when you open those tuck boxes.
That seems a little bit like Charterstone, right?
A little bit, yeah. Both have that element of discovery.
Yeah.
The big difference between the two is that in Charterstone, when you discover something, it's usually something permanent. You can't undo it. Whereas in Rise of Fenris, you could put the things back in those tuck boxes and reset it completely if you wanted to.
Okay. I will definitely look into that. It seems like a very, very cool module to add to this game. the rule book itself, as you said before, is quite extensive.
Yes.
And even in Scythe, when I sat down and read the you know the standard rule book with my wife, and then we read it through, and then 45 minutes later we just looked at each other. Okay, we just need to play now. So we went the wrongest way to play Scythe. So we have a very, what can I say, a very steep learning curve at the start. But
yeah,
then we just sat down and said, okay, we just need to play this, and then just see if something's wrong. We like, okay, we make a homebrew rule and then look into the core book itself after.
Yeah.
What I'm leading up to is that do Rise of Fenris need the player to like have a very good acquaintance with the standard core book?
That's a good question. I would say yes. I would say you need to know how to play Scythe to play the expansion for sure. However, in any group of people who play the Rise of Fenris, really the key is that one person knows how to play Scythe really well, and that everyone else has played Scythe at least once. And even that isn't necessarily necessary. It is possible for someone to start playing the campaign without having played Scythe, as long as there's someone at the table who really knows the game well. Yeah.
Okay, then I have a little bit different question. Can you say, if you were to like make a whole new game tomorrow, that how would you begin this process?
For a Scythe game or just any board game?
Just any board game, because with Scythe you said it was art first and then game.
Yeah.
Is it usually like the world first and then the game after?
It really depends on the game. And actually, I can give a specific example here. I'm working on 3 games right now. They're at different stages. All 3 are pretty early, but in the design process. But all 3 have different. I'm interacting with them differently in terms of the art. For example, one of the games, I have contracted artists to build a world for the game, and then I'm using that world and their art to design the game. That's one game. The second game, I am designing the mechanisms of the game, and I have no idea who the artist will be yet. I don't know, and really the world of this game isn't all that important because it's based in the real world. And then the third game is a game that I know who I want the artist to be, and I'm excited about that artist. And part of the reason I'm designing the game is because I'm excited to work with this artist. But that artist I won't have them. I haven't even actually reached out to them to see if they're available. I won't do that until I've designed enough of the game to see if it actually functions and that it's fun. So as you can see with all 3 of those examples, the art and world can come in at different times in the design process, depending on the game.
All right. So there's a lot of entry points that you use to like develop your games.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't have any more questions to to ask you now. I might have rushed some things, but as I said before, I'm kind of awestruck just talking to you. It's kind of a big deal being me talking to you. So
coincidentally, I have 2 Skype calls today, and both are with people in Denmark.
Oh, really?
you, and then later today, the person who designs the solo versions of our games. His name is Morten Monrad Petersen. He is he lives in Denmark as well. He's Danish, so I'll be speaking with him in about 4 hours today.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's just let's wrap things up. So if someone wants to pre-order this Rise of Fenris, should they go to your website, or is there any other way to pre-order things?
Well, for the next few days, it depends on when this podcast comes out, because we are accepting pre-orders, but it's a very short window. They'll close on Friday. We're recording this on Tuesday, so this may not get out there in time. But that's just direct pre-orders. We also have worldwide distribution. So if anyone wants anything that we've talked about today, they can go to their preferred game retailer, their preferred game store, and either buy it if they have it listed, or if they don't have it listed, just tell the store owner that they want it, and that store owner should be able to get it for them at some point.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
so much. Do you want to plug
your
favorite? Do you have a favorite game store that you buy from that you want to mention here?
Not really. I'm
Not really.
I'm ordering online and just find the cheapest stuff.
Okay.
As I said, I'm a dad, so money is quite low, and when I decide to get a game, it needs to be cheap. Well, thanks you so much for talking to me, Jamey. Sorry.
My pleasure.
I don't know why I want to call you Jeremy all the time. I had fun.
Yeah.
I hope you did too.
I did. Yeah. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. If you like this podcast, make sure to visit my Patreon to support what I do. It's at patreon.com/BARBES. I hope to see you there.